I was really blessed. I mean, I told you what my dad did for a living, right? So he was called to serve veterans. And my earliest memories of work, literally walking through the halls of a hospital, holding my dad's hand and watching my dad, who seemed like he knew everybody, going from bed to bed and hallway to hallway to veterans and literally putting his hands on them and talking to them and helping them to heal. And that was what work looked like to me. My mom said to me every day, apparently I needed some reminding. Every day she would say to me, of those to whom much is given, much also is expected. So I had no choice. I went to high school. I went to a high school called Hopkins Grammar in New Haven, Connecticut. It was founded in 1660. It's the third oldest school of any kind in the country. And the charter of the school was the breeding up of hopeful youths for future service to community. So I had every blessing. You know, it would have been hard to end up thinking any other way about life. But what it's helped me to understand is that we have to be trained to fight the outside influences that want us to behave in a way that's counter what's natural to us. You know, I just saw one of these things not long ago. You've heard thousands of them, but there was a series of experiments conducted with little babies who were just able to crawl. And they had people writing, and they would drop their pencil. And little babies, 13, 15, 16 months old, would crawl across a room. They would push pillows aside. They would crawl over barriers to get to the pen to hand it back to you. Right? That's who we are, authentically. But we need to work at it every day because the influences drive us to feel differently. Does that help? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Besides money, what do you see as being those bigger influences that turn people away from what is our innate desire to be empathetic?
Besides money, you said?
Besides money. Money is obviously a big one.
Oh, well, sure, sure. You know, it's a great question. I think we live in such a fast-paced society, and we have so many distractions. And we're able to funnel and stream self-aggrandizement to ourselves in seconds at any moment, right? So we sit waiting for a bus, and instead of talking to the person next to us, we're on our phone. My daughter, I have 14-year-old twins. Thank you for your concern. My daughter will be walking down the street with 3 or 4 friends, and they'll all be on the phone. So I'm kind of amazed at that, and I think that all of the technology that we can use for incredible power and incredible good, we sometimes use to separate us from others. And so I think it makes it harder for us to even know who's next to us. And if you don't, then it's harder to know what they need or who they really are. Now, I know that sounds like kind of the musings of an old guy, which is exactly what it is. But I do think that there is a disruptive presence of technology that makes it harder for us. So that's one. I think a second one, I alluded to it with the Fox and MSNBC comparison. I think we're also in a world where we get to choose our own media. And that's not inherently bad. It's actually a pretty cool thing, right? You get to watch what you want and all that kind of stuff. But I think the challenge of that is we then get the outside world filtered through a media that we chose. So I live in Chapel Hill. I don't talk to Republicans. Yeah, I don't. It's not clear that there are any. Yeah, I'm only half kidding. I mean, you know, if I really think about why am I living in Chapel Hill, well, because a lot of people I kind of got along with and felt really, well, we're all kind of retreating to our corners in terms of where we live and what we read and what we consume, and I think that is exacerbating that situation as well. And so you have to be very intentional. So last night, for instance, in a driving rainstorm, 24 CEOs slept out here in Wake County. They spent the night outside in cardboard boxes. You know, why did they do that? They're not really homeless, but they heard a whole evening of programming, they spent the night, and they heard a whole morning of programming to talk about homelessness and hunger and those kinds of things. Those are CEOs who have all the comforts that you could ever want, but they force themselves to experience something different. And I think that's a hard thing to do, and it's It's part of why we are separate. Is that even remotely close to the beginning of an answer? Okay, I was completely lost halfway through that answer. Yes, ma'am. Wow. I can't believe there was a question in that, because that was incredible. Did you record that? I mean, that was really, really profound, and I agree with you completely. So I think both are innate, but by saying that they're innate, they are there. I don't think that there are people who are not creative. I honestly don't. So when you're teaching, quote, teaching creativity, and you may be saying this, I think you're simply teaching people to release the creativity that's already there. Right? It comes in many, many different ways. I have a boy and girl twin, and they could not be more different. Right? They couldn't be. But both of them are creative in really unique and interesting and very different ways. But the concept that you have to be creative to be empathetic is really profound. Right? Because that's right. We have to use our imagination to step into the shoes of another person. Right? So if it's another person who's had the same experience that we have had, then you don't have to be creative, right? Because you've been in that place. But I don't know what it feels like to be a Syrian fleeing the war and encountering a razor wire. I'm never going to know what that feels like. I really have to work at shifting my frame to get that. That's why listening to that guy yesterday was so profound for me. So I have no answer to that question, because it's a beautiful statement. And I think it simply says that if we want all of us always to behave in a profoundly, fundamentally different way to create sustainable and nurturing communities, we have to teach one another what that looks like. And we have to be a part of this incredibly dynamic learning community. I'm always inspired by the Alcoholics Anonymous world, where there is this community of people that recognizes that they themselves are weak and they need the support of others. And wherever they are in the country, they're going to go because that's their family that will support them. And all of us in some ways are the same way. We are all weak, we are all flawed, we are all inadequate, we all fail to be empathetic at moments when it's most important. And if we could just turn to one another and go, oh man, I screwed that one up, can you help me to get back in touch with who I should really be? If all we did was make that pledge to one another this morning, what a beautiful thing would have happened. Thank you for that thought.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right.